When a stranger called me mom on my front porch, I thought it was some cruel joke. But when he handed me that letter, I realized my husband's past had just knocked on our door. The afternoon sun was sharp that day, one of those dry Georgia summers where even the air feels tired. I'd just finished trimming the hydrangeas when the doorbell rang. There he stood, late 20s, maybe 30, worn denim jacket, eyes a little too familiar, a shade of hazel I'd seen every morning for 25 years, staring back at me from across our breakfast table. He smiled, awkward and tense. "Mrs. Hayes?" he asked. His voice cracked just slightly, like he wasn't sure if he had the right house. "Yes?" I said slowly, gripping the screen door. He looked down, pulled a folded envelope from his back pocket, and said quietly, "I think this belongs to you. Or to your husband." The name Robert Hayes was typed neatly on the front. Something about the way he said it made my stomach twist. I asked, "Who are you?" He hesitated. "My name's Dylan Parker." He swallowed hard. I think, Robert Hayes is my father." I don't remember what I said after that. I think I might have laughed a sharp, disbelieving sound that didn't belong in the air between us. All I could think was, this is some kind of mistake. I watched him walk away, that envelope still trembling in my hand. The late sun caught the back of his hair, the same reddish tint Robert used to have before it went gray. And that's when I felt it, a cold, hollow certainty that this wasn't a prank. Something real had just cracked open. Before I tell you what happened after, I need you to understand who I was before that day. I was Claire Hayes, wife, mother, believer in calm routines and the simple goodness of people. Robert and I had been married for 25 years. We lived in a modest brick home on the edge of Macon, Georgia, the kind with a front porch swing and an old oak that dropped acorns on the driveway every fall. Robert owned a small construction company. Nothing fancy, but enough to give us a comfortable life. He was steady, dependable, in that quiet, Southern way. The kind of man who fixed things before they broke. Our daughter, Emily, was away at the University of Georgia, studying psychology. The house felt emptier since she left, her laughter replaced by the hum of the refrigerator and the soft ticking of the clock above the fireplace. I worked as a high school counselor. My days were full of teenagers and their heartbreaks, the kind of pain that feels like the end of the world until you grow up and realize it was only the beginning. Our life was simple, predictable. At least, that's what I believed. That evening, when Robert came home, I was sitting at the kitchen table, the envelope in front of me. He smiled as he walked in, still wearing his dusty work boots, his hair damp with sweat. "Smells good in here," he said, nodding toward the pot of chili on the stove. "You made the cornbread too?" "Robert," I said, my voice low. He looked up. "What's wrong?" I slid the envelope across the table. The smile faded. He stared at it for a long time before sitting down. His hand hovered above the paper, then pulled back like it might burn him. "Who gave you this?" "A young man," I said quietly. "Said his name was Dylan Parker. Said you were his father." The room went so still, I could hear the clock ticking again. Robert closed his eyes. A long breath left his chest. Then, finally, he whispered, "I knew this day might come. It's strange how fast the world can tilt. One moment, you're standing in the middle of your safe, ordinary life. The next, you're watching it split open, like glass, under a hammer." I sat there, my heart pounding, trying to understand what he meant. "You knew?" I asked. My voice cracked on the word. He nodded slowly, shame etched deep in every line of his face. "It was before us, Claire. Before we got married. I was 23. There was someone. A summer fling. Nothing serious. She left town before I knew she was pregnant." He felt my fingers tremble. "And you never told me?" He met my eyes for the first time. I didn't know for sure. She never reached out. I thought if she wanted me to be involved, she'd say something. I didn't even know if there was a child. "But you suspected," I said. "And you just buried it?" Robert ran a hand through his hair, exhaling hard. "I thought it was in the past, Claire. I swear, I never knew he'd come find me." I wanted to believe him, but the room around me was spinning. The smell of chili turned sour. The ticking clock grew louder, sharper. Everything I'd believed about my marriage about him felt suddenly fragile. That night, after Robert went upstairs, I stayed in the kitchen. The envelope still lay there, unopened. Part of me wanted to tear it to pieces. Another part wanted to read every word. In the end, I did neither. I just sat there, listening to the quiet hum of the house. I thought I knew a house now, holding secrets I never asked for. When I finally went to bed, Robert was already asleep, His back turned to me. The distance between us felt wider than the years we'd lived together. And for the first time in 25 years, I lay awake wondering who exactly I had married. The next morning felt wrong. Not because of anything Robert said, but because of what he didn't. He moved through the kitchen quietly, like a man walking on a minefield he'd built himself. The coffee maker hissed. The smell of fresh brew filled the air, something that used to comfort me. But that morning, it only reminded me of silence. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. Claire, about yesterday. I don't want to talk about it, I said, staring down at my toast. He see. I understand. No, he didn't. Because if he did, he'd know silence hurts more than anger sometimes. The envelope sat untouched on the counter for 2 days. I'd move it aside to wipe the surface, then put it right back like a ghost I couldn't exorcise. By the third morning, curiosity won. I brewed another cup of coffee, sat down, and finally slid my finger under the flap. Inside was a single-typed letter and a copy of a legal document, something that looked like a will. The letter began simply, Mrs. Hayes, my name is Dylan Parker. I believe your husband, Robert Hayes, is my biological father. My mother, Laura Parker, passed away last year. Among her things, I found this copy of my grandmother's will. It names Robert Hayes as an heir to the Parker family property, on the condition that any of his children, legitimate or not, be notified of their rights. I am writing to claim what's lawfully mine. My hands trembled. I read it twice, then 3 times. This wasn't about closure. It wasn't about family. It was about money. And something about that word, lawfully mine, made a cold anger rise in my chest. When Robert came home that evening, I was ready. He looked tired, his shirt collar smudged with dust. He dropped his keys on the counter and kissed the top of my head out of habit. But this time, I didn't lean into it. Robert, I said, holding the letter up, you'd better sit down. He froze. You opened it? Yes, and you should thank me because you're being sued. He blinked, confused. What? I slid the paper across the table. He scanned it quickly, his jaw tightening as he read. When he reached the end, he rubbed his temples and said under his breath, "Oh God, care to explain?" I asked. He sank into a chair, silent for a moment. Then he said, I didn't know about this. Laura, she was the woman I told you about. Her mother was wealthy, owned land out in Monroe County, but I never took anything from them. I had no idea there was a will. So this is real? He hesitated. I guess it could be. His honesty or lack of surprise hit me harder than the letter itself. So you did sleep with her? I said quietly. He nodded. Yes. Once. Maybe twice. It was a long time ago. And you never thought that might matter? I didn't know she got pregnant, Claire. I didn't know. His voice cracked desperate, almost pleading. You've got to believe me. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But belief and trust aren't the same thing. For days after that, I walked through my life like a ghost. I'd go to work, listen to other people's heartbreaks, give advice I could barely follow myself. At night, Robert would sit beside me on the couch, watching TV in silence, his hand reaching for mine. I'd pull away, pretending to scratch my arm or adjust a pillow. The distance between us grew wider by the day, and it wasn't just emotional. It was something unspoken, something thick in the air. Then one night, I found another clue. I was putting away laundry when I noticed Robert's phone light up on the nightstand. A text preview glowed across the screen. It said, "Thanks for meeting me. I'll let my lawyer know. From Dylan Parker." My breath caught. I stared at it, frozen. The text disappeared before I could read more. Robert came out of the shower a minute later, towel around his neck, humming quietly like nothing had happened. Everything okay? He asked when he saw my face. I swallowed hard. Did you meet with him? He froze mid-step. I was going to tell you, he said after a pause. I just didn't want to upset you again. Upset me? I repeated, my voice trembling. Robert, your secret son shows up with a legal threat, and you meet him behind my back? It wasn't like that, he insisted. I just wanted to talk, man to man. He's not after us, Claire. He's just confused, lost. He wanted answers. Then why mention a lawyer? Robert's jaw clenched. Because he's got one. And apparently, so do we now. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake listening to the ceiling fan spin, the faint creak of the floorboards. Robert's breathing beside me was steady, peaceful, even. And I hated him a little for that, because while he slept, I was replaying every year of our marriage, every moment of trust, every promise, wondering where the truth ended and the lies began. The next morning, I called our family lawyer. Richard Calhoun. He'd known us for years, handled our mortgage, our wills, even Emily's college fund. When I explained the situation, he sighed. Claire, if Dylan's claim is tied to that Parker estate, this could get messy. Especially if he's got proof of paternity. My voice caught. Proof? A DNA test, perhaps, he said. Or even correspondence between Robert and the mother. Anything that shows acknowledgement. But there isn't any, I said quickly, though. Even as I said it, doubt crept in. Richard paused. Claire, are you sure? I wasn't. Not anymore. When Robert came home that night, I asked him one question. Did you ever send her money? He looked stunned. What? No, but the hesitation in his eyes betrayed him. Just a flicker. A pause shorter than a heartbeat. I caught it, and in that moment, I knew. This wasn't just an old mistake resurfacing. It was a secret that had been carefully buried for decades, one he'd hoped would never see the light of day. That night, after Robert went to bed, I went through the desk drawer where he kept his old papers, receipts, tax forms, contracts. I wasn't proud of it, but I needed the truth. And buried under a stack of invoices, I found an old bank statement from 1999. A monthly transfer small, consistent to someone named Laura Parker. For 12 years, my knees went weak. He hadn't just suspected he had a child. He'd known. When morning came, I didn't make coffee. I didn't cook breakfast. I just sat at the kitchen table with that bank statement spread out in front of me like a wound I couldn't close. The sunlight crept across the floor, warm and golden, but I felt cold all over. When Robert walked in, buttoning his shirt, he smiled the same tired smile he always did before work. Morning, honey. Sit down, I said. He froze mid-step. What's wrong? Sit down. Something in my voice must have told him I wasn't asking twice. He pulled out a chair and sat slowly. I slid the paper toward him. You've been sending money to her for 12 years. He blinked, staring down at the statement. His lips parted, but no words came out. Don't you dare tell me this is fake, I said. It's your account, your signature, and her name right there. He rubbed his face, exhaling sharply. Claire, please. Please what? Please calm down? Please ignore the fact that my husband has been paying another woman for over a decade? It's not what you think, he said, voice shaking. It wasn't an affair. It was obligation. Obligation? I laughed bitterly. That's what you call 12 years of hush money? He slammed his palm on the table. It wasn't hush money. I was trying to do the right thing. The right thing. Those words echoed in my mind like a bad joke. He told me everything then. Laura Parker had shown up at his office years after their brief relationship ended. She'd been struggling, no steady job, no health insurance, and a young son she claimed was his. She didn't ask for marriage, or even love. She asked for help, so he gave it. Quietly, regularly. She didn't want to ruin my marriage, he said softly. She just wanted to raise her son with some dignity. I thought if I helped from a distance, it could stay simple. Simple? I whispered. You lied to me for over a decade, Robert. You built our life on a secret. He looked up at me, eyes rimmed red. I was scared, Claire. Scared you'd leave me. Scared of what it would do to our family. I wanted to scream, to throw the coffee mug, to break something, anything. But all I could do was whisper, you already did that, Robert. You just didn't notice. That night, I packed a bag. Not everything. Just the essentials, a few clothes, my toothbrush, and my wedding ring, which I slipped off and placed on the dresser. Robert tried to stop me at the door. Claire, please. Where will you go? I don't know, I said honestly, but I can't stay here. Not right now. He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. You've had years to tell me the truth. You chose silence. I'm choosing peace. And with that, I walked out. For a week, I stayed with my sister, Rachel, in Portland. She didn't ask too many questions at first, just handed me a blanket, poured me tea, and said, take your time. But when I finally told her everything, her face went pale. That's unbelievable, she whispered. He's been living a double life, Claire. I don't know if I'd call it that, I said softly. He wasn't in love with her. He was just guilty. Guilt doesn't make it okay, she said firmly. You deserve better than this half-truth marriage. I nodded. But the truth was, even in my anger, I still loved him. That was the cruelest part. A few days later, I got a call from an unknown number. Mrs. Hayes? This is Dylan Parker. My stomach twisted. What do you want, Dylan? There was a long pause on the line. Then he said, quietly, "I'm not calling about money. I wanted to apologize." I didn't say anything. He went on. "When I reached out, I didn't know how much my mother and your husband had. History. She told me bits and pieces before she passed. I was angry at him for never being around. But after talking to him, I realized she kept him away." I closed my eyes. He continued. "He told me he wanted to tell you. He just didn't know how." I almost laughed. "That's what cowards always say." Dylan was silent for a while, then said, "Maybe. But he wasn't a bad man, Mrs. Hayes. Just a scared one. He helped us when no one else would. And for the first time since this all began, I felt something shift inside me. When I came home that weekend, Robert was sitting on the porch steps, waiting. He looked older, smaller, somehow. Like the weight of all his lies had finally caught up to him. "I didn't think you'd come back," he said quietly. "I almost didn't," I admitted. But I spoke to Dylan. His eyes widened. "You did?" I nodded. "He told me you helped them, that you didn't abandon them completely." Robert's voice cracked. "I wanted to do the right thing, Claire. I just went about it the wrong way." I took a deep breath. "You think?" He smiled weakly, tears filling his eyes. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I want to try to make things right between us." I looked at him for a long time. The man I'd built a life with. The man who'd broken my trust. And I realized something. Love isn't about pretending. Betrayal didn't happen. It's about deciding whether the person who betrayed you is worth rebuilding with. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I said finally, "but I'm willing to see if I can try." He nodded, swallowing hard. "That's all I need." We spent the next few weeks untangling our lives, not separating, but reevaluating. Therapy sessions, honest conversations, tears that came without warning. And little by little, I saw the man I once knew beneath the guilt and the lies. Dylan stopped by once too. He was polite, nervous. Even when he thanked me for hearing him out, I told him something I hadn't planned to say. "You're not your father's mistake," I said. "You're just part of the truth we were both too afraid to face." His mild eyes glistening. "Thank you, Mrs. Hayes." And for the first time, that name didn't sound broken. That night, Robert and I sat out on the porch, the air cool and quiet around us. He reached for my hand, and this time, I didn't pull away. "I missed you," he whispered. I looked at him and said, "I missed us." He nodded. "Then let's try again." The stars above us didn't sparkle any differently. The world hadn't magically fixed itself. But in that small, fragile moment, we had peace. They say trust is like glass. Once broken, you can glue it back together, but the cracks will always show. For months, that's what our marriage felt like. A mosaic of what once was pieced together with hope, therapy sessions, and uncomfortable honesty. There were days I thought we were healing, days when laughter slipped through the cracks, when Robert would make coffee just the way I liked, 2 sugars, no cream, and for a fleeting second, everything felt normal again. And then there were days I couldn't look at him without feeling that ache deep in my chest. The ache of knowing that the man who promised me forever had hidden a part of himself from me. But healing isn't linear. It's messy, it's raw, and sometimes it's silent. I started journaling again during that time. Every night, I'd sit by the window with a pen in hand, writing letters I'd never send. To Robert, to Dylan, to the woman Laura Parker had been. I wrote about the weight of silence, the fear of truth, the way love can bruise but still survive. Sometimes, Robert would peek into the room, hesitant. "Writing again?" he'd ask softly. I'd nod, trying to make sense of it all. He never pried. He just sat beside me, quiet, patient, as if his presence alone was an apology. About 3 months after everything came out, Dylan invited us to his graduation ceremony. At first, I didn't want to go. The thought of facing him in public, of being the wife who didn't know, made my stomach twist. But Robert asked gently, "Would it mean something to you if we went?" I took a long breath. "It would mean something to him," I said. And so, we went. The auditorium was packed that day, full of proud parents, flashing cameras, and the hum of excitement. When Dylan walked across the stage in his cap and gown, I felt something unexpected. Pride. Not because he was Robert's son, but because he was a young man who'd survived so much confusion, resentment, loss, and still stood tall. After the ceremony, he spotted us. His eyes softened when he saw me standing beside Robert. He walked up, holding out his hand. "Thank you for coming." I smiled and shook it. "Congratulations, Dylan." He hesitated, then added quietly, "My mom would have liked you." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Then I simply said, I think I would have liked her too, because by then, anger had faded into something gentler, understanding. Later that night, Robert and I drove home in silence, the kind that wasn't uncomfortable anymore. At a red light, he reached for my hand. Thank you, he whispered. For what? For not giving up on me. I looked at him, the lines on his face, the remorse in his eyes, and realized something I hadn't before. Forgiveness wasn't about excusing what he'd done. It was about freeing myself from the prison of resentment. I didn't do it for you, I said softly. I did it for me. He smiled faintly. Then I'm grateful. Either way, we're not the same people we were before the letter arrived. And maybe that's a good thing. I don't trust blindly anymore. I listen differently. I notice the pauses, the unsaid words. But I also love differently, with boundaries, with awareness, with intention. And Robert, he's changed too. He doesn't hide from difficult conversations now. He doesn't brush off emotion with logic. He listens, really listens, even when it hurts. Some nights, when we sit on the porch and watch the sky turn purple over the pines, he'll reach for my hand and whisper, "Thank you for giving me another chance." And I'll whisper back, "Thank you for earning it." One evening, months later, I received a small envelope in the mail. No return address, just my name, written in neat handwriting. Inside was a photo. It was Dylan and his fiancée smiling, arms wrapped around each other, with a handwritten note beneath it. It said, "Thank you for not shutting the door on me. I think Mom would have called you brave." I pressed that note to my chest and closed my eyes. For the first time, in what felt like forever, I felt peace. Sometimes life doesn't break you to destroy you. It breaks you to show you what's inside, to reveal the strength you didn't know you had. And sometimes the people who hurt you most are the same ones who teach you what love really means. It isn't about perfection. It's about showing up messy, flawed, remorseful, and choosing each other, again and again. Now, when people ask me if I ever truly forgave Robert, I tell them this: forgiveness isn't one big moment. It's 1,000 small ones every time you choose peace over bitterness, understanding over pride, grace over revenge. It's waking up next to someone who once broke your heart and realizing you're still willing to hold their hand. That's what love is. Not blind trust, but brave compassion. And if you've ever found yourself in my shoes, if you've ever discovered a truth that shattered everything you thought you knew, please remember, you can survive it. You can rebuild. Maybe not the same life, not the same love, but something new, something stronger. Because sometimes, what's broken doesn't need to be hidden. It just needs to be healed. When I see Robert now in the garden, or reading in his chair, I don't see the man who betrayed me. I see the man who stayed, the man who fought for my forgiveness, the man who helped me learn that peace isn't forgetting, it's accepting. Would you have done what I did? Would you have stayed and tried to rebuild? Or would you have walked away? Tell me in the comments below. And if my story touched your heart tonight, please like, share, and subscribe. Because sometimes, hearing someone else's story reminds us that healing is always possible, even after heartbreak.